Thanks for listening to another episode of the Business of Fun podcast. I am your host, Dave Wakeman. My guest today from TruCrowd, he's the co-founder and CEO, is Daniel Krizan. And we talk about facial biometrics and all kinds of cool stuff around the technology of getting into and out of venues and ticketing. But before I tell you about my conversation with Daniel, let me remind you to visit my website. It's davewakeman.com. You can find my blog, you can find the store, you can find all kinds of stuff. And make sure you get the Talking Tickets newsletter. It's talkingtickets.substack.com. And if you're listening to this podcast, I can't understand how you haven't already signed up. You can also join us in our Slack channel. There's a link for that in the show notes because I'm never going to be able to remember what the link to that is. But check that out. So back to Daniel. So Daniel is the CEO and co-founder of TruCrowd, like I said at the start. But I wanted to have him on because since the last time we talked about facial recognition and some of that kind of interesting things about biometrics and tickets, the technology has changed quite a bit. So we talked about how easy it is to use these solutions. We talked about how you solve for the secondary market using biometrics. We talked about how sponsorship and customer experience can help pay for solutions like this. We talked about GDPR compliance. We talked about ballots and data and all kinds of crazy stuff. So here's my conversation with Daniel Krizan on the Business of Fun. Okay. All right. I want to welcome Daniel Krizan. Jesus. Let's pause that. After I did all that work, I totally screwed up. All right. I want to welcome Daniel Krizan to the Business of Fun podcast. Daniel, how are you?
Really feeling good, and thanks for the invitation, Dave. It's hard to be here.
This is great. So TruCrowd is involved in facial biometrics and all kinds of really cool stuff. So we had a really nice conversation about a week or so ago to figure out if it made sense for this conversation. So I think I'll start because, I'm just learning about TruCrowd. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on and what you're up to?
So TruCrowd is a spin-off of a larger biometric company called Innovatrix. And our meat and potatoes is biometrics for the event sector, whether we are talking about sports, whether we are talking about conferences, music industry, so that's concerts or festivals. Mm-hmm. We make sure that we allow the fans to link their face to their ticket and very simply also enter the venue using just their face. So in the easiest form possible, your face becomes your ticket. And this is the first part of what we mainly focus on. And of course, there are multiple varieties of use cases that you can build from just the technology itself, mm-hmm. whether it is focusing on ticket reselling, whether it's focusing on security, capturing data, and then monetizing data in terms of commercial revenue. And of course, we are also talking about a better experience and a faster entry for the visitors of each venue. So overall, we really try to bring fairness to ticketing, and we try to improve the experience of everyone within this industry.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that was interesting to me when we were chatting was how far the technology has come over the last few years and how much more capability like a tool like TruCrowd has to fulfill these ambitions of a better customer experience, controlling or limiting or stopping the secondary market and creating opportunities for monetization. Can you talk to me, and I guess talk to me like I'm an idiot about this stuff because I don't know a lot about it. So in this case, it's like, you are going to be doing me a favor by teaching me and walk me through like some of the technological changes and the capabilities and, make it so I understand how easy it would be or how difficult it would be to apply this, because I think that's one of the big challenges people are going to the first questions they're going to have.
Let's try to walk you through two different angles. So I will start with the technology itself, because as you mentioned, it has moved or evolved quite a bit in the last, let's say, 5 years. Why is that? Because the processes and the neurons that are trained, there are much more effective ways of doing that. And the end result is one of two things. First is that the accuracy has increased tenfold, which means that it's now much more reliable to have a system using biometrics to compare two faces and say that they are either identical or the match between the two faces is high enough to claim that it's the same person or not. And this is much more efficient than looking with your bare eye and doing the same verification. So one is the accuracy, the second is the speed, because many of the people might know one of two scenarios where biometrics is used, and probably the most common is the one at airports.
Yep.
And people have this notion of biometrics being super slow and taking really long to process the whole time from when they scan their passport and are supposed to get through a gate. And that's because there are all those processes on top. However, biometrics for access control to stadiums, to venues, is a very different story, because you don't have to do all the extra checks with the documents on site. All you need to do is smile into a camera and enter, which suddenly takes a second. So we went from having a technology which was decent for its time, let's say 5, 6, 7 years ago, to a technology which is very, very high quality and can perform very well in hard environments. And this gives us the opportunity to use it for more use cases beyond just the governmental use cases or banking or airport. So technology has gone really far. And now, to mention the second angle that you've kind of brought up in your question, is how hard is it for the fans or the users to actually use biometrics? Well, I like to say this kind of a saying that we use biometrics every day, or not all the people, but I would say 70, 80% of the population that actually do have smartphones, they use biometrics every day for unlocking their phone. So it's technology that you already know, you already trust. It's just bringing the same technology into a different environment. Now, when we are talking about biometrics in ticketing area, ticketing space as a whole, biometrics takes maybe 30 seconds in the first part when we are talking about verifying the identity, which means that you want to know who is buying a ticket, whether that person is real or is a bot, and if same person is then entering the venue. So we are talking about a process which takes roughly 30 seconds, and that's comparing a document to a selfie and just saying that those two people are the same. And then we are talking about a second part, which is extremely easy for the fans, because all you need to do at the venue, as I mentioned before, is just smile into the camera and you're good to go. You don't have to search for QR codes, emails, open apps, do all those tedious jobs, which we know that the more friction there is, the harder and the worse the experience is for the fans. And so you just want to take all of that away, and that's why it's extremely simple for all the visitors, and why it's also gaining its interest across multiple markets.
So let me follow up then on this, because would it be fair to say that the setup process, you say, takes about 30 seconds? It's kind of like when you get a new iPhone and you have to do the thing where you move your head around, right? And so then it's really like unlocking your phone, which I think people would understand a lot more. And so then I guess the second part of the question then, because you're nodding and people can't see you, that you're like, oh, no, yeah, it's just like setting out your iPhone. This is kind of like comparable, or it fills a sort of similar gap to what people have been trying to do with these ballots, right? Which is like verifying user, providing a little bit more security that you know the person you're using, giving you that like sort of security. Is that correct?
It's indeed part of it. Actually, you bringing up ballots is very interesting, because I've been in touch with one of the other industry experts, if I may say, Martin Haig, and then he's really touching upon this topic, because he believes that ballots are the way to actually solve partially the ticket scalping or ticket resetting problem? It indeed is, because we are talking about the fact that the biggest problem, as we know, with ticket scalping is the bots. So the use of bots and the use of creating fake accounts. And our job, or the job of biometrics in ticketing, is to exactly stop that from happening, because a bot does not have a face, a bot does not have a valid document. They are not able to present either of those two, which means that if we require this one-time verification, we can suddenly clean up all the accounts who are buying tickets and ensure that the event organizer knows who bought those tickets and knows that it's a real fan and not just a third-party illegal reseller or such.
Yeah, when I started thinking about that too, I was thinking of Martin. So it's he deserves a shout out for this idea. So you talk about the idea of solving the scalping problem, and the big issue being bots. One of the things I did want to bring up was that the idea of solving the some of the challenges that are in the secondary market, and like how a tool like TruCrowd can do that, because at least as an American who has a different experience with the secondary market than somebody who may be sitting in Europe, I can see both sides of it, which is like there's a challenge and an opportunity there. How do you present TruCrowd as a solution for the secondary market? And and is it all just one side of solving a problem, or is there both an opportunity that you teach people about as well?
There definitely is an opportunity for even organizers or promoters, whoever is in that category. Why is that? Because I support a lot ticket resale and ticket transfer, because I believe that all the fans should have the flexibility. You never know what happens to you, if you need to run a different errand, if you get sick or whatever. So you should have the flexibility to free your ticket to someone else. That's, I think, very important in the whole industry. Like you can do it with airlines and your flight ticket. Of course, it costs you some extra fee to change the owner or the name on the ticket, but you are still free to do that. And I think that should remain in the ticket industry also in the future. What is the opportunity is to take the whole resale market as is and get it under the control of the event organizer. So what I'm trying to refer to, currently, there is going to be 3, 4, 5, and more, let's say, illegal or unauthorized ticket resellers who are going to use bots to buy those tickets and then sell them for 5, 7, 10 times the original price. And this is the money that your event organizer is losing, because they are not getting this extra money from the resale. So if you can get it under control, then of course it brings you also monetary value, which is super important to understand for promoters and even organizers. And the way how you can do it is to close the loop from both directions. So as I mentioned, the first step is the identity verification. So it's just making sure that a bot or someone who has been blacklisted in the past for being a tout is not going to be able to open a new account, or is not going to be able to buy a ticket. And this cleans up the whole process, because you know that it's only the real fans who are buying it. If you link this ticket to the face and continue onwards also for the access control, which means that you require the fans to actually enter the venue with their face, you know that these people can't forward the ticket to someone else who is a bot or to someone else who is unauthorized, which means that you see it from both sides. So as opposed to, let's say, let's call it dynamic QR codes or deferred tickets, there a bot can buy them. They can still, the company can still resell it 2 hours before the game or 1 hour before the game, and so forth. With biometrics, you can only resell it. You can resell it at whichever time, but you can only resell it to another verified member. This is probably the most important notion in here. So you verify the people in the beginning, which means we know you're good to go. We know you're a real fan, and go and enjoy the event. If you can't, we give you the environment where you can transfer the ticket to another verified person. And then when you are entering the venue, biometrics is not there to decide whether you can go in or not. Biometrics is there just to recognize your face, see if that face is in a list, and send the ticket number to the access control system, who is going to decide if it's used or not and let you in. And that's very simply said, the whole ecosystem. So to sum it up, the value is in taking the resale market or secondary market as is and getting it under the control of the event organizer, who's going to have monetary benefits. And of course, it's going to reflect in having benefits also for the end user, the visitor, because they're going to pay less for their tickets, assuming that the organizer is not going to screw them over. But yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to ask too, is it's like, so for an event producer, they can control everything. So if they want to put a cap on the resale, they can do this. If they don't want to only face value, they can do this. They can put let's say they put a floor, because that's like one of the things that people, especially in the States, they talk about is the price floor, and not letting the, and I don't necessarily buy into this idea, but let the free market do its magic. All of those things are in control, right? Is that they can do that.
Yeah, indeed, and that's really the big value proposition. Have this under control. Have both primary and secondary ticket sales under your control. Have all the money, know the prices, have happy fans.
Right. Well, so how does this fit in with some of the legislative changes that are being proposed here in the U.S. or in the U.K. and just all over the really all over the world at this point? Because I think governments all over the place are trying to figure out how to put a little more control around the secondary market, because between bots and kind of extortionate fees and things like this, there's people that have a lot of concern about the secondary market. How does TruCrowd fit into that world?
So, in my opinion, governments are not the entities who should be responsible for solving this issue. They have not created the issue. They should not solve it. Government's role is to enable the promoters and event organizers to have the enablement to solve it, which means that they can put in some laws or legislation which is going to help them. And that's exactly in line, for example, with the use of biometrics for solving ticket resale. Because if the government goes and says, this is one of legal ways of solving this problem, and you are good to use it, then let's say the ticket masters and SeatGeeks and all the big companies, they can go and implement that solution, and they can stop the resale out of their hands for good. So this is more the role of the government in this case. What's happening, there are two different ways of approaching it. One is where the government, let's say in Latin American countries, is a bit more authoritarian, which means that they will say it's going to be this way, and then everybody's going to follow. And it's more linked to the security issues rather than ticket reselling. But that's how they approach legislation around biometrics. And then we have the second approach, which is maybe more the case in the US and UK, where they try to impose different fines or different penalties for specific behavior, but that does not really solve the issue in its root. So let's take a very simple example from the UK. It was in November, it was last month, when the UK government just implemented the new legislation, or they spoke out about implementing this new legislation where they banned resale above the face value, excluding some extra fees, which is also a very nice loophole, I would call it. Yeah. But they blocked this.
Very nice loophole.
Yeah, very nice loophole, because you can sell it for face value, but if you can put the price of the fees skyrocketing, then there is no real difference. But let's say that they are going to cap it somewhere. They still are going to potentially charge you with a penalty of 10% from your revenue. But if we look into the past to the big companies, let's say the Amazons, the Microsofts, and all of these large corporations, there have been many, many examples of them breaching rules and data protection and other things that were normally forbidden. And the penalty that they received was huge, but still minuscule compared to what money they made by breaching this. Yeah. And this is going to be the same thing that's going to happen in this case, because the unauthorized resellers, the big players, are going to continue doing what they do today. And if the fine comes, okay, well, they would take it, but it's not going to kill them. It's 10% of the revenue. It's not going to kill your company. So right. It's not stopping you from doing what you do today.
Right. I was going to say the other thing about it too is like it becomes a cost of doing business. And then it's also how is it enforced, right? So you say 10% of the revenue, but how are you really like calculating that? How are you enforcing it? Yeah. Do you have a mechanism so that if they move offshore, because that's like been a issue that's come up with, if I'm not mistaken, the UK's issues around Viagogo. They just moved, they moved outside of the UK and it made enforcement of some of these things. So yeah, I get it. It's like it's a really complex thing, and it's the solutions being offered, I think, are well-meaning, but they're not necessarily realistic. But again, I'm waiting to hear some of the details, because I know that the as they say, and at least we say it in America, the devil's in the details. And how is it going to be enforced? But it's an interesting thing, and it was I was curious about it because there's a lot of people who are I did a survey, the 2025 Talking Tickets global survey, and the secondary market was an issue that came up over and over again, because people either they see it as an opportunity in some cases, and then there's a lot of people who feel it's a nuisance and that they don't know how to get their heads around it. And and something like TruCrowd gives you that, the word you use, control, and it allows you to kind of put the guardrails, I think, around how you want it to be. And I think that's very valuable, because I think that's where I think a lot of the frustration comes, is that there's no partnership, there's no control, there's there's a lack of safety, there's a lack of security, there's a lack of knowledge, there's a lot of different things. And I think in the world we live in, those things are super important. Let me ask you this, because I think this is probably like one of the areas where people might push back a little bit too. Are there any GDPR kind of challenges that like something like TruCrowd encounters? Because I know, and I'm asking it from a different way than like normal, because I know that would be like something that like the secondary market, the brokers would bring up, like going, oh, well, like, how is that? This is like kind of asking for unfair amount of data. And
of course, it's always.
The thing about it is, people should be able to see us laughing about this too, because this is like,
every time we talk about biometrics and ticketing, the first question is, what about data, and what about data protection? It's always a topic, and there is a fair amount of education that needs to be done in the market to explain all the stakeholders what it means, how we protect data, and how it's collected, how it's processed, because they really fear if their data is going to be shared with the government. They fear that it's going to be misused for other purposes and so forth, and that's not the case, and that's not the objective that we have when we bring this solution. So there are of course some challenges with GDPR, because we need to make sure that we help those who implement the solution to be compliant. I think the most important security feature that is in the solution is that we don't work with raw face images. This is super, super important, because we always tokenize them. We always convert an image into a string of 700 characters, which are non-reversible. You can't recreate the original face from those. And then we just compare those. So it's just comparing letters with letters and making sure that those letters somehow with the algorithm work. These letters, or these, we call them face templates, these hashes, they can be read and recognized by a different provider's algorithm or a government's algorithm. They only work with what we offer. So we really take very, very big precaution in our solution and make sure that all of it is based on consent, and the people know what their data is collected for, where are the limits, until when they are going to have their data retained, and so forth and so forth. So there are really 5 to 10 large topics which we discuss with each client, and where we say, okay, these are the measures that you need to put in place to be compliant. But of course, it's a big topic, and we do our best to always advise and to make sure that our solution is in line with what's needed. and that people really do consent to the use of technology.
Yeah. And you talked about data, because you said data is like usually the first thing. And I think we were talking about it when we were setting up the conversation. I was talking about how price and money are things people always talk to me about. And I know that like I'll get my inbox will fill up with people going like, well, this sounds great, but it's probably super, super expensive. And one of the ways that I think one of the case studies or the examples that you've had the opportunity to share with me was around how you use sponsorship and some of the data that you collect, that there for the venues to create opportunities for monetization that also enhance the customer experience in a way that it allows a venue to pay, to let the tool pay for itself. Am I wrong? Or, and if I'm not, I know I'm not wrong. I mean, maybe I misheard you, but you were like going, you can make it, there's opportunities to create it so it pay for itself. So number one, like, what does that look like? And then number two, when I say improve the customer experience, how does that work hand in hand? Because I think most of the time, anytime there's a financialization of something, it makes it heavy-handed and it kind of ends up detracting, even if it's not the intent, from the customer experience.
So there are three kind of different points to discuss. So let me start with the first one, and that's going to be related to the sponsorship. So how does a biometric solution like this pay for itself? It's through sponsorship money. And the reason is that clubs, we usually use this in sports, so let's say football clubs or American football clubs, doesn't really matter which sport we take. They have a limited amount of space which they can allocate to sponsors, and it's always the same stuff. We're talking about shirts, we're talking about the stadium and the banners and all of those assets. But those are usually more for, let's call it classic brand awareness. So we are really talking about showing your brand, but the fans, the people who are exposed to that brand, they don't really take action. So you're not really able to convert those people from spectators to customers, or to at least active spectators that interact in some way with the brand. So you lose on potential from doing that. And our solution, or let's say biometric ticketing offers enablement for these sports clubs to create a concept and offer this concept for sponsorships, for sponsors. So let me I will very briefly walk you through so that it's more easy to visualize and kind of understand. So imagine a situation. We can take an example of a brand. We can take one of the big beverage brands that sell in the stadium, and Coca-Cola and so on, or beer brand, doesn't really matter. They can associate themselves with TruCrowd's biometric access control in the first place, which means that everyone in the stadium is going to be offered a possibility for a fast track, which means that they have a more convenient, a faster way of entering the stadium, and they get this priority, this VIP feeling. To be able to apply for that, they need to obviously register. So they need to take that selfie, and they need to get into their system and link it with a ticket. This is the first place where a brand like Coca-Cola or any other beverage brand can already have their exposure. So it means that they are linking themselves with speed, with convenience, with all those benefits. So they can already have this communication saying Coca-Cola is bringing you a better, faster, more secure, whatever experience they want. So they can really be creative with that. So that's the first point of exposure, where all the people who are going to use the solution, they are going to see the brand and they're going to have the first interaction. The second interaction is with the access control. And still we are talking about just those assets which are similar to the ones that clubs have, but it will get more interesting in step 3 and 4. So in step 2, you have the access control, where you can have a private separate lane, which can of course be branded. We're talking about the surroundings, the hardware, the software, and therefore Coca-Cola is telling you, I'm bringing you in with this better and more modern technology. I'm bringing you this better experience. Now, what becomes interesting is that once you successfully show your face and enter the venue, if the organizer does have a mobile app, that's where Coca-Cola can start communicating with you very specific to go take some specific action within the premises of the stadium. So we are talking about a fact, let's say they have a new flavor that they want to introduce within the stadium, and they want to understand whether the people who are visiting are the right people, the right consumers, whether it makes sense to do it or not. They can have notifications to the people entering saying, hey, for you being great and using this modern way of entering the stadium, we've prepared for you a free sample of a new drink, and then we just want a quick feedback from you on this. And suddenly they start interacting with the people. They can teach them or show them a new flavor, a new product that the people can start buying, not only within the stadium, but also outside of the stadium and so on. So what you've created is a interactive way between a brand and a fan instead of just a passive. So you move from passive to active, and you actually use biometric ticketing and access as a tool, as an enablement for the brand to communicate with the user.
Yeah.
Does that make sense in a way?
Oh, it definitely makes sense to me, because what I think I teach this executive MBA brand management class from time to time. And one of the things that we talk about is top of mind awareness, right? So the initial touch, when the speed and convenience, right? It was like Coca-Cola, right? Could talk about how fast and easy it is, and like something like this. And it's top of mind awareness, right? Which, we've been inundated with Coca-Cola messages, all of us, all over the world for decades of our lives, right? Our whole lives. And so that's important because you need to keep reinforcing that message. But then, one of the things is like, how do you move people down the funnel? So, just because there's like going to be some brand management nerds that are listening to this, you're talking about working people through a full funnel, right? From like the high level brand of awareness through the middle of the funnel to potentially taking action, and that's important because then it allows you to turn this back around and how it pays for itself. It's like you're giving people better than just this blind data that we often get, right? And this kind of animatized data, maybe like just whole venue data, because you're able to take some of this, and I don't know if you can really ever personalize things one-to-one, but you do get closer to having more actionable, relevant data, unless I'm wrong.
It's maybe it's not one-to-one. Of course, it's harder to do that, but it's exactly what you're saying. It's you enabling the people and the brands to interact together. And okay, this is maybe just a free sample, but you can be more creative if you are an airline or if you are a travel agency. You can be selling packages for away games for Champions League, and you can hotels, flights, and all of that. So you can really go crazy and wild with your marketing team, and you can go and really monetize the people right within the stadium. If they don't buy directly, they can reserve something and pay later. It doesn't really matter. But the thing is, you already capture them because you are offering them something relevant in a moment when they actually want to be offered something. Because once you enter the stadium, usually you're always seeking either for some food and beverage, you are seeking for entertainment, you actually want to do something. So if someone prompts you with a notification, you are very likely to follow that notification, and then the interaction grows in value. So this is how it pays for itself, because of course the sponsors are going to have the extra value, the fans have the extra value, the club or the event organizer has the extra value, and all is paid exactly by the sponsor. So this is how you can implement it in the early stages. And this is just like the early stage data. Of course, you can use data for other stuff. So this is maybe the pillar number 2 I was talking about earlier, that you can connect your face to ticketing, to access control, later on to face payments for food and beverage and so on, which means that in an anonymized way, the event organizer can really understand your preferences. So this goes a lot to personalization. So we are really talking about the fact that you can create different bundles with food and beverage and tickets according to the preferences and size of the people. Like if it's a family of 4 that visits once a month, when to send them a bundle of 4 tickets with 4 hot dogs, 4 Coca-Colas, whatever that is. So you can already start selling even before the event. That's also a very interesting way of doing it. And this is very powerful because you have the correct data. Today, if you have a season card, you can pass one season card over to another person, so you don't know if the data connected to that season card is correct or not. because of course I can spend money on your behalf and the data system doesn't know about it. So this is probably the most interesting part of biometrics in this sphere, in this area, is that we create or we bring correct data, and we can help connect the silos to make sure that when you have that connected data, you can beautifully monetize on them, on the data, and you can offer what the people like when they like it, even before they ask for it.
No, I think it's great, the way you've laid it out, because I understand, like, one of the things that I struggle with people is helping them understand the importance of segmenting their market, and then looking at the thing, like, because that's, I think, the when people tell me about one-to-one marketing, like that sort of mythical one-to-one marketing thing, it's because they think that there's like some magical, like having that one-to-one connection will be magical. And I was like going, well, no, because most of the time, most people have a lot of their preferences are pretty consistent. And like, so if you do a good job of like segmenting your market, then you can understand people at kind of like a group level. And of course, it's not 100% perfect, but you realize there's 5 or 6 buckets that you can put people into, and then it allows you to use this, what you call correct data, more effectively, right? Because
you could go. Sorry for interrupting, but you could
go right ahead.
Yeah. Because you could really go to one-to-one marketing in the sense that if I know that these are your preferences, this is when you enter the stadiums, this is what you normally buy, how often do you buy, who do you visit with? If I know this data, then I can really just communicate that one value proposition to you, instead of offering one thing to many. Instead of one to many, you do one-to-one. And this is super, super strong, because if I know it's your birthday, I can offer you an upgrade for a better price or anything, because I know that you are more likely to buy that extra service on that specific day. So you can really play around with the data. So you can go from segmenting and having 5, 6 segments to going and do marketing one-to-one.
Yeah, and the birthday example is great, because you could even go like this: go, hey, Daniel comes to 5 or 6 games a year, and he has 2 or 3 beers and buys himself some kind of snack. It's his birthday. Let's upgrade him, because there's a bunch of seats that we haven't been able to sell. And you can, again, the customer experience, and then how much goodwill, because one of the ideas that we didn't even bring up here is that you make each touch point a little bit more valuable, a little more unique, a little bit more valuable. Because one of the big things that I know from my work in research and branding is that the touch points start a lot earlier in the process. So and then they go on a lot later. And so but the most important thing about this is that the small stuff really, really matters. And this is an accumulation of really meaningful small touches that aren't complicated, add value, and make people feel like, my God, this whole thing has been really well thought out. But again, maybe I'm wrong.
No. I mean, all the fans, me, myself being a fan and going to sport venues, to music venues, I want the event organizer to personalize the experience to myself. Why not? If you have that opportunity, the more everything is personalized to me, the better experience I'm going to have, and the more reasons I have to return. It's very simple.
Yeah, and it gives you a chance too, because I know that one of the huge challenges that teams deal with too is that people don't necessarily know what other enhancements there are. And so like something like this, again, I want to, I keep coming back to this, and it's needless, I think, about the one-to-one thing, but it's just like, you can do that, on a one-to-one basis. It's just like, go and let me look at the patterns, right? And this is a pattern that allows you to offer Dave this thing, right? Like, it could be my first time at Barcelona at the Camp Nou. They would want, and you could, all of a sudden, Dave needs this, and I'm a sucker, so I probably need it. So, but it's great, because then it makes my experience much more impactful. It makes the way I talk about the experience much greater. It has just these continuing knock-on effects, and I think it's could be really valuable. But the big key is you'd have to be thoughtful and creative about how you implement. It's not like a magic wand, right?
Yeah, it's very much about that, because of course you don't want to force something to the people, but if you prompt them, if you nudge them in a very gentle way in the right moment, you are very much likely to increase the ancillary revenue that you have from them. Because many times brands end up by, okay, we sold a ticket, we got the person in, and that's where they end. That's where their revenue per capita or per fan ends. But if you can nudge them in the right direction, suddenly you may, upgrade them. You can sell them merchandise. You can sell them more food. You can sell them, different kind of attraction stuff, or tickets for next game. You can really, really play around. So this data, I know it's always a topic, because everybody says, we have more data, but necessarily having more data doesn't mean a higher value for the organization. It's the execution on data. So if you have the correct data and you can actually act upon it, and you can drive this behavior, so you can prompt the people to take action, that's where the data starts to have its value. And that's the very important part of it. So have correct data and be able to execute on it. And this is what brings the extra added revenue and value in total.
Yeah, I think it's great, because one of the issues that I'm always pushing for is like, just be a little more thoughtful and creative. And so sometimes data, like, that big data, the air quote big data, is used as like this hammer to beat over people's heads. But I like the way you talk about correct data more, because the thing is like, if you're talking about big data, the utility of it can be limited. How relevant it is limited. And then the more stuff you put in there, how long it's useful goes down as well. So like correct data that you use in a way that's like meaningful to one person or a group of people is much more valuable, right? Specificity just in anything is way a better way of approaching things than just trying to like take a blanket. But again, I would say that. I would say that. So Daniel, where can people find out about you and TruCrowd on the internet?
Well, you can go and visit our website. So it's classic www.truecrowd.tech. And of course, I am pretty active on LinkedIn. So I'll be very happy to connect with anyone who is interested to know more, or anyone who sees really value in maybe implementing the solution and solving one of the different problems that they might have. So definitely reach out. I'll be happy to connect.
Okay, perfect. Well, I appreciate you doing this.
Thanks a lot. And again, thanks for the invitation. It's been a nice time to chat, and let's hope that it's going to bring value to the others.
Let me know what you thought of my conversation with Daniel by sending me an email. It's my name, Dave at davewakeman.com. Make sure you check out my website. It's davewakeman.com. And get the Talking Tickets newsletter at talkingtickets.substack.com. I mentioned it. You should join it. But we have a Talking Tickets Slack channel. I'll put that link in the show notes, because I can't remember that web address no matter what I do. I've also dropped the link to the Talking Tickets 2025 survey. I'm still taking your insights and your replies. So if you haven't had a chance to fill it out yet, take 3 or 4 minutes and share it with me. As always, I remind you to rate and review and share the podcast. Do it on your favorite podcast platform. It helps me get great guests like Daniel. Helps people learn about the podcast, and encourages me to continue to do it. I'm a sucker for positive reinforcement. But it's really just a great way to help the show keep growing. So do that. And if you know somebody who would benefit from conversations like this one with Daniel, last week's with Nick Falzon, the one with Matt from Ticket Time Machine, all of these, let them know. Share it. We're 45 minutes into this thing. I know you love it. So, as always, this is the week of Christmas. So thank you for being here. Happy holidays. Not just Christmas, but any holiday. Thank you for being here. I couldn't do it without you. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Take it easy.